So, ephemeral art is, I think, something that most people have a basic understanding of, but can you explain what you mean by ephemeral architecture? The term sounds almost like a contradiction or maybe even a provocation.
Okay, well, for starters, let me just point out that we consider landscape garden design a part of ephemeral architecture. Okay, we have identified four major characteristics of ephemeral architecture. A primary one is modesty. We're making a modest proposition here, and we're asking that the architects and the design team and the client, for that matter, be modest. In particular, regarding their expectations and their attempts to predict the future. I mean, if anything, we would say design for what you know. Don't try and plan for every possible eventuality. We would ask that the project, the building, if you will, be considered a work in progress and not some fixed statement or final product by the architect. Now, this would involve some kind of ongoing involvement of the architect in the project after it's built, and we think that's a good thing. Ephemeral architecture ideally would embrace some of the values and the spirit and the strategies that have been learned over the years in the field of ephemeral art. And in particular, ephemeral or environmental art, which IPARC is quite experienced with. So I'll speak kind of from the environmental art perspective. One of the beauties of this field is the immediacy of execution that you get. Typically, these programs offer you a limited time frame, a limited budget, and you have to produce something that you present to the public at an exhibition. And it's amazing the ingenuity that this kind of pressure creates. We call it kind of creativity in the raw. I said we're not really against anything in the architecture field, but let me say that the immediacy of execution is one of the things that gets lost when you have these really extensive planning processes. And you know, the conventional wisdom is that you put that money up front, you invest it, it's money well spent because you're going to avoid mistakes, and mistakes are costly. Of course, that's true. We value the need for good planning, but the time that's lost, I mean, the years and years that go by from the point at which you have this idea and the excitement for doing a project to the point where you're ready to have that building available for use, is an enormous cost in itself. The planning costs money. So to that extent, we are going against the conventional wisdom and suggesting that perhaps the money should be shifted away from that planning a bit and put to work at the end, after the building is built, so that you can have some modifications made, or you maybe have made some mistakes and you can fix them, you can afford to fix them. In environmental art, you look at the project as an investigation. The artist comes out, studies the land, has a conversation, if you will, with it, and proposes a project that is site responsive. And it would be wonderful if the architecture field could work in the same way, that the building is an experiment in essence. But in the architecture field, really the experiment doesn't really start until the building is up. So again, get it built. Stop the planning already. Site specificity, of course, is very important in the field of environmental art, and we feel actually that architects are quite sensitive to that and make good efforts, though they probably can learn more from what's going on in the environmental art field, because that's a strength. In environmental art, you find it a good thing to use soft materials. Softer materials, they're more adaptable, they're more flexible, and we think that the architecture community should give permission for the use of these kinds of materials so that the spaces can be more adaptable, and so you can afford to be more experimental with the work. Environmental art is accustomed to using what is at hand, including found materials. And environmental artists are open to making deals, trying to find materials that are cheap that can be acquired so that they can make a bigger installation, for example. The last element of ephemeral architecture is it's motivated by an egalitarian impulse. Right now, I think there's some satisfaction that high-end architecture is serving the institutional world probably reasonably well. We're talking big facilities, hospitals, and college campuses, things like that. And the people with big budgets, the corporations and individuals who have their office buildings and palaces that they're building, they may not benefit much from this conversation. However, ephemeral architecture is more concerned with the 80% of the built environment that is not getting the fruits of really good architecture. And so the hope is that the architecture community might be somewhat refreshed and enlightened by some of these lessons learned in the field of ephemeral art, and that these could accrue to the benefit of people with building homes, small businesses, and that the architecture that would result would be more affordable, more immediate, more timely, and ultimately more adaptable and flexible to the change in times.
What makes you think that this is the right time and that Hyde Park is the right place for this conversation to take place?
Oh, that's an easy. I like that question.